Chalo, let me start it, right, sir?
All right, sir.
Okay, for the viewers, let me start it. Here is the recording link here. Any previous webinars, if you want to go there, just go there and get it there. There are recordings are there. Let me refresh so that you can see where the webinar is. So, just below the recordings, this is the actual webinar is here. Just click the red arrow on DK Sahib sir and you will get the webinar. Right, sir? And below down there is a question, that is a Slido window. You type your question. I have limited to 160 characters to have a crisp question, and just click the send button. It will come to me and will answer these questions. And some of the part in Dr. Dhiren Ganjwala's, he will ask you what are the suggestions. So you can give me a suggestion on WhatsApp also if it is a longer, or you can share your slides also in my WhatsApp. Just record audio or a video and you can send me on WhatsApp. Click here in WhatsApp, Naveen, so it will come to me. Let me introduce today's faculty. Dr. Dhiren Ganjwala, you know everybody. He and Dr. Kashyap Adesna will be moderating the things. You know Kashyap Adesna is a very dynamic trauma surgeon at Junagadh. Dr. D.K. Shah, sir, very senior orthopedic surgeon and our past president of Gujarat Orthopedic Association. He is at Rajkot. You know Dr. Mr. Soumya Joshi. He's a writer, director of 102 Not Out film, which was screened on Sri Amitabh Bachchan and led Sri Rishi Kapoor. He's from Mumbai. He will be sharing his experience of how to represent yourself in a story. He will give his tips and tricks, how he directs the film and how he tells what message he wants to give. Dr. Kaustubi Patel is a very senior oncosurgeon with here the HCG hospital. Dr. Taral Nagda, everybody knows, pediatric orthopedic surgeon, innovative mind from the Mumbai. Dr. Mandip Shah is a young onco orthosurgeon. He will communicate, he will show the communication skill with the onco patients, which is most difficult part to communicate many times in the life of the doctor. So let me go back to now Dr. Dhiren Ganjwala. Please take over the screen and start your sharing. Dhiren. Dhiren, have you started? Okay, fine. Dhiren, your voice is not coming. You have muted yourself. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Good evening, friends. This is going to be a very different presentation. And the topic is how to convey your ideas effectively in the presentation. A lot of people called me today morning and said that, Dhiren, are you going to show something on how to make the presentations, how to animate? I said, no, this is completely different idea. What I want to say, I will try to convey with the that suppose you go to the bank, State Bank of India, and if you deposit a 1 lakh rupees to the cashier, when you leave the bank and when you come home, you get a message that instead of 1 lakh rupees, 50,000 rupees is deposited in your bank account. What will be your feeling? How will you feel? So I will ask DK Sahib, how will you feel if such thing happen?
Yeah, it has happened also, and I feel shocked that how it is possible. And I will try to call the manager or the person who is responsible for this. And I feel very much upset, and because 50,000 is not a less amount. So I'll go back to the bank again and I'll find out what has happened exactly.
Okay, so that's a very important, like what you said is a very right word, that I will be shocked, right? Most of us also have the same problem, but we are not trying to get the balance, and that's why we are not shocked. So what I mean is, like, what is the success of presentation? The success of any presentation is not how much information you give. It does not important, or it's not important like how much ideas, how much matter you or the material you share with the audience. but the most important thing is like how much is received, how much is deposited in the audience. That's most important. And we are going to discuss about that. So how my lecture is arranged? The lecture is arranged in 4 parts. I will explain you one by one. The first part is of 2 minutes, in which I am going to give you brief information. The second part is the lecture 1, which is of around 7 to 10 minutes. So that's the first way I'm going to give a presentation. And most of the presentations, if you see in orthopedic community or any medical community, are like that. After that, we will have our audience and the panelist opinion, discussion, suggestions, how to make it better. And once we have that ideas, I will tell my way of how I have modified that presentation. So this is how the whole session is divided. The third, the most important one is like audience and the panelist opinion. So once the first lecture is over, you can start sending your suggestions to Naveen. And while he's receiving the suggestions, the panelists will try to give their suggestions, how to make it better. Okay, so any query about this, or I move forward?
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let's come to the first part, and that's the basic information. So this lecture is about a flat foot. We all know that when a person is standing and the medial border of a foot, when that is flat or the arch is not there, we call it flat foot. To understand like what is the cause of flat foot, the current concept is the arch of the foot is maintained by the ligaments. It's not the bones, but it's the ligaments which are going to decide whether the foot is going to be flat or not. As shown in this picture, if ligaments are good, even on weight bearing, the arch will be maintained. However, in few persons, children or adult, these ligaments are elastic. And in that person, when they stand, when the weight comes on the foot becomes flat. The commonest type of flat foot is a flexible flat foot. Most of, I would say 99% of the flat foot which we see in our practice, they are flexible flat foot. How we decide the flat foot? We examine the patient in a non-weight bearing position, and if arch is present in that case, and when the person stands, if arch disappears, it's called a flexible flat foot. The second test is we look at the person in a weight bearing position from behind, and in that we can see that the heel is in valgus. Now when we ask the same person to stand on the toes, lifting the heel, now we can see that the hind foot or the heel has gone into varus. So that's the characteristics of flat foot. The popular treatment, most of us, when we see this patient, we suggest them to go for arch support. It could be a custom made, it could be a ready-made, but this is a most popular treatment. And the presentation which I'm going to share now onwards, after the basic information, is about the flat foot. So let's come to the first presentation. It's on the management of asymptomatic flat foot in children. I'm going to cover 3 points in this presentation. The first point is what is a long-term disability? What happens to these children when they become adult? Is it really a problematic or they remain asymptomatic? That's the first point I'm going to discuss. The second point is whatever treatment we are suggesting, are they really effective? Do they really change the shape of the foot? That is the second point I'm going to discuss. And the third point is whatever treatment we suggest, we always have to understand what are the benefits and what are the side effects. If there are more side effects than the benefit, then we have to avoid such treatment. So I'm going to discuss these 3 points in next 7 minutes. So let's take the first point, that is long-term disability. The child, when present to us, is asymptomatic, but parents are really worried that after few years, when the boy or the girl is adult, is it going to become painful, whether they will be function properly or not? So for that, I will describe few studies. The first study, which was done in 1947, almost 70 years before, and that was a very popular study which was done in a Canadian army, and the number of people which they recruited was 3,600 freshly recruited army personnel. On that, they carried out this study and they tried to find out whether the flat foot is really a cause of pain. And the conclusion of that paper is that flat foot does not cause any disability. This was before 70 years. Still, we are not accepting this point. The two landmark Indian study carried out by my mentor, Benjamin Joseph, and which was published in Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery in 1992 and 1995, they are very important. What they tried to see, they studied 2,300 school-going children in Karnataka in the first paper. And in the second paper, they studied the people with a flat foot. And the conclusion of that both paper was that flat foot is generally asymptomatic. So the first paper said the same thing. The second and the third paper also said the same thing. Let's come to the third paper, which is a relatively recent study, which was carried out in an Australian Air Force recruits. 230 recruits were analyzed to find out like whether it leads to more pain, injury, or problem in function. And it was concluded that the flat foot has a very little impact on pain, injury, or on function. So based on this fourth study, I would like to say that flat foot is not a cause of disability, even when person becomes adult. Now we come to the second point about the treatment and whether this treatment are really effective or not. So a very popular study which was carried out in USA and which was published in John and Boyd JBJS in 1989, the study was prospective and it was having a follow-up of 3 years. What they did in this study, they divide the patients randomly into 4 categories. The first category was no treatment was offered. So that was a control group. And then they studied the 3 treatment regime in these children. And they followed up them for 3 years. And the conclusion of that paper is whether you treat, whether you don't treat, there is no difference in the outcome. So the point is the treatment does not produce better result. It does not change the shape of the foot. It does not cure the flat foot. Coming to the third point, the side effect of treatment. Most of us believe that the treatment which we are offering, they are innocent treatment. It's just a question of few bucks and it does not cause any harm to the patient. But a very important study which was again carried out in Journal of Pediatric Orthopedic in USA, and that study says that if you treat these children, it leads to inferiority complex. Those children, only those children who are treated for the flat foot, they develop inferiority complex. The other children with flat foot, they don't have a negative image about their body. So it's a treatment which is responsible for producing inferiority complex. And I consider it as a very negative or a very important side effect of what we call an innocent treatment. Many times we observe that when we give a art support to them, it leads to discomfort. And we need to understand that every art support costs around 500 rupees. And every 6 or 12 months, they have to go for the recurring cost. So these are the 3 side effects. So ineffective treatment is not without side effect. So from that, I would like to give a take-home message that flat foot usually does not cause pain when they become adult. The art support, the popular treatment which we give is not effective in curing the flat foot. And the ineffective treatment like art support has a serious side effect in the child's psychology. Okay, so that's the end of my first presentation. Okay, so now we are going to discuss how to make this presentation interesting. Or our idea, what we discussed in the initial part, I have shared this much information. So now the question is like what we need to do so that all the ideas which I told you enter into the mind of audience. So that the 1 lakh rupees gets deposited as a 1 lakh rupees. And what happened to Shah Sahib that it was only 50,000 was deposited. So we are now with this, I open the session and we can have our opinion of panelists one by one. And at the same time, I request audience to give their suggestions by WhatsApp message to Naveen. And Naveen will also share those messages with us.
Yes.
So, Naveen, you go on taking the message. I am asking the panelists about
Still there is no message has come. No message has come.
No, don't worry. Like, see, panelist is going to discuss, and during that period, you will be able to give us some clues. So, Kashyap bhai, the first question is like, suppose you have to give this presentation, how will you make it interesting?
See, this has been, wonderful. The message is also very short and crisp. Probably just to attract, I may add few animations or few pictures.
Good, yeah.
Then things were right otherwise.
Okay, so you suggest to add some animations.
Yes.
Right, okay. Yes, Mandeep, I know that this is not your area of interest, but still, your presentations are really wonderful. So I would like to ask you how you will make it better.
So what I will do very precisely is that I will take a patient. I saw 15 years back. I'm sure you have hundreds of patients whom you have seen 15 years back or 20 years back when they were kids. And I will take sequential photographs, clinical photographs, because the patients understand clinical photographs and not the X-rays. Photographs till today. So that is the same patient's follow-up for over 20 years or 2 decades, because the concern in parents' mind is what will happen when they become adults. So you are showing a patient who was kid when you saw him first, you didn't treat him, and in the adult life he has no problems. He is absolutely fine. So just a story, which could be their own story in future. So that will be, I think, the most effective thing. A patient who sees another patient who has gone through this sequence or gone through this process is, I think, the best message that you can give to your patient.
Yes, that's a wonderful suggestion. Like you take one patient which you have observed over a period of 1 decade or 2 decades, and then you show that the serial picture. Yes, Naveen, you have something.
Ultimately, it is same. The story of one of the patient story. It should be like a story.
Okay, so that's a case example of one patient. Okay, right. Yes, Taral, you are the master innovator, and you have always a wonderful ideas of sharing the things. So how will you do that? Or would you like to see after Dikesa side?
Absolutely. So, if I have to really give feedback, so what I start with WWW. WWW is what went well. And I must tell audience and you what went well. First is that each of your slide carried a very crisp and limited message. It was not one whole slide full of messages, very crisp messages. Second thing, what I liked in this presentation is every point had 3 sub-points. And this is which is by Stephen Covey, that if you want to make a presentation, there should not be more than 3 points on a slide, which you illustrated very well. Third thing, I like that you started with a photograph of a child. You introduced the problem and then started giving solution one by one. So a lot of important points. What I also like when I'm presenting is that when people see my slide, they should recognize this is Taral Nagda's presentation. And when we see that maroon color and the bold type, we know this is Dhiren Janjwala's presentation. So every presentation should have its watermark, what I call as a watermark, where people recognize that this is Kashyap's presentation, there is Dhiren's presentation. Because when you see that familiar colors and fonts, then people know that what is coming up. Now, if I were to change this, could be better if. So any task in life should be analyzed as WWW, what went well, and could be better if. So the only part of could be better if is what is the audience. Dhiren bhai, if you were making this presentation to parents of children who are going to school and telling them that flat foot is all right, then the presentation would be different. It will be like a story, because they don't understand the papers, they don't understand the medical jargon. The same presentation given to a postgraduate students will be different. And the same presentation given to orthopedic surgeons would be little different, because they want to know what are the more practical things. What I would also add to this presentation, this presentation showed us what not to do. It didn't show us what is to be done. So if there are some exercise patterns, which strengthen tibialis posterior. And that is something which would help an orthopedic surgeon to tell his patient. Because when a patient comes to an orthopedic surgeon, they have to give some advice. If you don't give advice, the condition of the patient will be like person who lost 50,000 rupees. He said, I've come and paid you consultation fees, but here I'm going without any advice. So, that advice also I would add in the presentation, in some form of some videos showing actually something. But overall, a wonderful presentation, and I think there are very little things I would add to it. Thanks.
Okay, Naveen, coming to you. Before that, I would just summarize the few things Taral said, and that's very important. Like the content of the slide should be not more than 3 or 4 points. That's the most important thing. A lot of people, they criticize me that having a same type of color combination for so many years. But what you said is like now this has become a trademark of Dhiren's slide. And almost everyone now knows that if Dhiren is giving an orthopedic presentation, it will be like this. So these are the two important message. What you said is also right. Like when they are spending money, we need to give them something really innocent, not the art support, but something innocent to them. So that is also a very important thing. Yes, Naveen, what?
One slide, one message only. That should be, there may be more number of slides, but one slide, one single message only.
Okay, that's very true. In PowerPoint, whether you make it a 5 slides or a 50 slides, you are not going to pay anything extra to the Microsoft. So go on making more slides, but keep less words in the slides. Yes, Nikesa sir, what you would like to add to this?
I think it was excellently done. I think Taral Bhai have covered almost all the things, but huge slide and with so many messages in one slide is little keeping us constipated. So what should be the message has been very well, but when the patient comes to us, if you have a small clip of video of walking or whatever the flat foot is and what are the exercises to be done, I think that will impress them because they wanted to have something from.
Okay. One thing I would like to clarify before we go, this presentation
correctly
is
said, I think exercise and everything has to be shown.
Okay, this presentation is meant for orthopedic surgeon, general orthopedic surgeon. Those who are not pediatric orthopedic surgeon, it is basically meant for general orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah. So I think presentation was too good, but as have said that the message, each slide should carry one message.
Okay, Kaustubhai, before Mandeep, Kaustubhai and then Mandeep.
No, I was suggesting you that only because Kaustubh sir is not an orthopedic surgeon. So let us ask him how much he understood from this.
Yeah, exactly. That's
and then let us go to
And then I have a more
Mr. Joshi.
difficult.
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Joshi.
That's right.
So good evening, everyone. When somebody is presenting, I think one of the most important slide is the first and last slide. And I would say that the first slide should introduce the main heading of the topic, but with that, you must have a proper introduction of the speaker, because it might happen that people in the audience might not know who is the speaker, what is his background, where he is practicing, what is his qualifications and all. So I would say that the first slide should contain not only the topic, but also things about the speaker. That should be the first slide. And the last slide should contain, must in today's era, your email ID, and if you allow, the contact phone number or mobile number. This is important because you don't want your audience to go back and forget about this. They are going to think about your lecture. It is going to go in their mind. They will come up with questions. They may not have questions at the time of your lecture, but there might be some more question coming to them, which they can communicate with you by email or by phone. And that is what is important thing for your lecture to go across people. So the last slide is important and it should contain your contact details. That is what I would say. This, apart from these two things, another important thing which I usually keep in my lecture, I would say this way, that I try and put few slides or one slides at least during my lecture as a wake up slide. You know, there is a discussion going on for the main topic, but you want to see whether your audience is actually with you or not. And to have that test done during your lecture is important. So you may pause, you may ask a question, and you may have something coming up from an audience as yes or no, or raise of hand, or something like that, which will wake them up, which will get them again involved in your lecture. The third thing which I would put as element of suspense, you know, you have in this lecture, you as an outsider to orthopedic, I don't know, every orthopedic might be knowing what you said in your lecture, but as an outsider, you know, there is one element of suspense in your lecture, which is that there is a side effect of a seemingly unconsequential treatment. Now, if that is there, you build up on the treatment options, you build up on, you know, you can raise a question, how many of you would give a foot support, or how many of you would treat it like that, and have a show of hand. And then you put this slide which says that there is a side effect of this which is detrimental in children. And you know, that is the way the message can go across more effectively in the to the people and audiences with you during your entire presentation. This is what the way I would handle.
Yes, what you said is, yeah, please, sorry.
Yeah, no, and so and your final conclusion should come as a punchline, you know, and then it should start. And I'm very impressed. I'm very, you know, I always do it like this, that whenever I start my lecture, I outline my lecture, what I'm going to give you as a concise, and that is what you did very well. So I think I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much for your important suggestions. Naveen, yes.
The last slide should be including your action, what action they have to take on their part. That should be included.
Right, okay. Yeah, so a lot of good suggestions. What you said is like try to make it interactive so that audience remain awake and with you. Yeah, that's very true. And like when we are taking a physical presentation, we should do that so that audience is always with us. Somehow this is not possible in the Zoom meeting, so I could not do that. But what you said is absolutely very important thing. Mandeep, you...
So the one thing is, it depends on whether you are, as Dr. Taral said, the presentation will be different if you are presenting to a layman or your patient, or to a fellow orthopedic colleague. The presentations will be markedly different. So so again, you want to remain away from the data and the technical stuff when you are discussing the things with patient. Again, from remain away from the X-rays and be with the clinical pictures. And when you are talking the same with an orthopedic surgeon, you are going to show the X-rays more than the clinical pictures. So that is what would be different.
Yes, Soumya bhai, can we have your say on that? I know that you know orthopedics very little, or you know medicine also very little, but as a non-medical person, how you or what you think about this?
Well, it was I think a great coincidence that the topic was flat feet, because my wife has flat feet, and she's a wonderful actor. So we have struggled with it a lot and gone to so many places. And
I will have to stop this video.
Yeah, please do that so that
I am stopping your video. Your voice will be there, sir.
Always.
I'm just sacrificing your video.
Yes, Soumya, please.
That it's better to keep it as the topic was relevant, because my wife has flat feet and we have struggled with it with it a lot. But she always feels that it's better to keep the treatment to the minimum and keep it as simple as possible. But it's always worrying And this presentation of yours, which was like 6 to 7 minutes, actually solved that problem. That virtually, even from a layman's point of view, I understood that it's not a big deal. It doesn't require any intensive kind of a treatment. It can be perhaps left alone with obviously the special shoes that she has and comfortable. So I always look at communication from the point of view of a story. Now, when it's a presentation, the story cannot be entertaining, which it would have to be in our field. That we need to create an entertaining story. That entertainment part is not something compulsory for the doctors, because but they nevertheless need to tell a story with clarity and a certain amount of brevity and conciseness, and that's exactly what I found in this this presentation, and that's why I was very happy that I got it in like 3-4 minutes. So you can obviously take me as a patient, and as a patient I understood what you were trying to convey and communicate, and that's enough for me. I would very much agree with what Kaustubhai said. It's a kind of a wake-up slide, which we do in our theaters and our cinema. First minute of the film or first minute after the interval, when the audience is entering with its popcorn and the other baggages of the outside world, it's always much better to give them a minute to wake up and come easily, effortlessly in the flow of the story. So yes, perhaps that wake up slide and the end punch would help the the presentation.
Okay, Naveen, any suggestions from the audience?
Dr. Jawar Jethwa suggested to ask faculties who is shocked and who is satisfied with your story. Who are the shocked and who are satisfied with the way you presented?
I think all the panelists, I think they seem to be highly satisfied with the way.
Yeah, that's
okay.
The validation is Dr. Mr. Joshi, because he's a not.
Yes.
He could understand.
That was not a part.
Yeah.
I think this question was from the first slide only, that 50,000 rupees or something, where the shock was there. I think so. It is relating to because it's a webinar, so we do not know where he has related exactly.
Yeah.
The timing is 4:24 p.m. So when he started, I don't know. So Dr. Kamlesh Dev Murari has asked, before how many days presentation should be ready? How many times you do practice for
that? I think will come in Dr. Kashyap Bhai's presentation.
Okay.
Can I just make a point, Naveen bhai?
Yeah, sure, Naveen.
So the key to a good presentation is not to be satisfied with your own presentation. Many of us have the same presentation we give at multiple conferences, and be critical of your presentation and get it improved the next time. So, with your or anyone else's presentation, never be satisfied. That's my point.
And
I would like to add on this.
Points. Yeah. There are two very small points. One is nowadays, most of the presentation are on LED screen. So there are many people still have a white background. So it is better they avoid white background, which is rightly done by you. And another thing, you have used some red marker on the corner. So the red and the green, bright red and the green are better to be avoided, because that's a distraction to your eyes.
Right. Yeah.
So ideal color combination. That's right.
Right. Okay. So what you said is like, Taral, I fully agree with you. And if you look at, I was just looking at the number of revisions I had for this presentation. I have given this presentation at least 10 times, and the total number of revision was 237. So in this 10 times presentation, I have went on revising it to make it perfect. So what you saw today was probably after so many revisions, this was the end product. But let's come to the second part of the presentation. Naveen, shall we go ahead, or like, would you like to have some comments?
No, no other. Somebody said it's a wonderful presentation, but it is always ongoing skill and art. You improve on time. That is the comment.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Dhiren bhai, I have one small point, if you permit.
Yeah, please, please.
I would just very quickly like to, coming from a writer's point of view, I'm already feeling humbled and a bit of an outsider. But I take this, I feel that theater and Operation Theater, that's how I'm, I'm sort of sneaking in. But I'll just very quickly tell a story, and I think that might help even the informative presentations. I always tell this story to my theater workshop writers. Basically, see, it's a story. Story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if these three, graphs are clear, then that story would be communicated in the best possible manner. And I would very quickly, like an example, would love to give quickly narrate a story. There is a young man who decides to commit suicide in the morning, and he's very frustrated and depressed, and he decides to commit suicide. But he also decides that, okay, I'll walk 1 kilometer before committing suicide. And if in that 1 kilometer, if a stranger smiles at me, if someone smiles at me with love, then I think I would have a chance and I would change my plan. And that's where the story ends. Now, this is not ending at the climax. It is ending at the pre-climax. The climax is the last sentence, which is very important, where the writer says, if you had met this guy on the road and a part of that 1 kilometer journey, what do you think? Would you have saved that man's life? That means, would you smile at strangers? Now, it's a beautiful, beautiful story. Would you spread love like this? But it is told in such an effective way at the climax that it, in a way, ignites or inspires the audience to do the last bit. And I always, in my personal experiences with the doctors, have loved the doctors who tell me the story till the pre-climax, which is they tell you what the problem is, they tell you how to solve it, and then at the end they would ask you whether you'd be able to do that. These are the 3-4 scenarios. Which scenario would you like to land up in? I think a presentation, if it has that kind of an open-endedness, even that, it might be a little more effective.
So last part is the action part. What action there has to take, that has to be there.
It's an art of storytelling.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Art of storyteller, yeah.
Wonderful.
Wow. Naveen, shall we go for the second part?
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
The Ketan Shah from the Rajkot has said, can presentation be like O. Henry style? What is O. Henry style? I don't know. Anybody knows? O. Henry
okay, I'll
style.
tell you, because it's O. Henry is a great American short story writer, where all his short stories ended with a very strong punch. And like if you have read Last Leaf, it was a beautiful story. Lots of very well-known stories. So it would basically be O. Henry style would be ending the presentation on a very high note.
So the person leaves the theater or the consultation room on a high or in a positive note.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So before we start the second part of the story, let me take you to the April 2014. It was one of the Sunday, a hot Sunday. At around 9 o'clock, I got a call from Soumya Bhai. and said, "Doctor, I need to see you." I said that, "Soumya bhai, this is Sunday. Can we meet tomorrow?" Soumya bhai said that, "Sir, I have a lot of back pain and I really need to see you today only." So I succumbed to his request and said that, "Yes, I am going to my hospital for some other work. And definitely you can come in like say 2 hours time and I will see you." So with that, we met on that Sunday. After completing the consultation, he had a severe back pain, and then he said that do something because I have some important drama tomorrow and I want to become all right. So I prescribed him some medicine. When everything was over, while getting up, he said that, "Doctor, he called me sir. So, sir, do you come to your clinic every Sunday?" I said that, "No, but I have to give some presentation at Karnataka, and for preparing that, I have come to my clinic." So after listening that, he said that, "Yes, sir, I can definitely help you." And then he said that, "Can I take a seat?" So he sit down, and then for 1 hour he told me and what I implemented in this presentation. So basically, what now we are going to listen is due to the commitment of, or like the suggestions of Soumya bhai. So now we are coming to the modified lecture based on his suggestion. So the topic of this presentation is management of asymptomatic flat foot in children. This is about Jayant Rao. He's a pediatric orthopedic surgeon in Bangalore, practicing in Bangalore. He did his fellowship from UK, and for last 3 years, he has started his practice in Bangalore. One day, he had a 9-year-old boy brought with father, mother, and 2 grandfather and mother. So 6 people were in the consulting room, and they were really worried about this young boy. And they said that we have observed that the foot of our grandson is flat. Because there were 6 people in the consulting room, that itself says that they were really worried. So I carried out the examination. This Dr. Jayant carried out the examination of examining without known weight bearing, then looking from behind, asking the child to stand on the toes, lifting the heel, and he observed that the hind foot goes into varus. So he concluded that this is flat foot. Because child was not having pain, it's an asymptomatic flat foot. So he prescribed on his later pad that diagnosis is flexible flat foot. This is not going to cause any problem in future, and no treatment is required. So the whole family, the 6 people, they were extremely delighted, and child was also very happy. And from their family, like everyone could express their joy, the sense of relief to the doctor. So doctor was also very happy that he could really give a correct advice to the family. So he went home, and he also told about the incident which took place during the day. So he really felt that I am very happy, I am very lucky that I become a pediatric orthopedic surgeon and I could relieve the tension of a family. Somewhere after 2 months, he got a notice, and that was from the consumer court. And the charges which were against him, made against him were, the 3 charges were there: that you have misguided the family. The second, you have not given the treatment where treatment has to be given. And because of this 2 points, you have really neglected the patient. And why not you are supposed to pay a X amount to the family? So he was really surprised, like on one end, before 2 months, the family was bowing while leaving the consulting room. And in just 2 months, the things has changed completely. So ultimately, the case was brought to the consumer court. During the matter, he realized that there is one senior orthopedic surgeon who has actually instigated the family and he has said that child requires a treatment and the previous doctor has completely neglected your child. And that was the reason of this problem. So ultimately he was asked to defend in the court. So he said one by one. The first point is like, does flexible foot cause the disability? He presented the study of Canadian Army. Then the study says that flat foot does not cause disability. Then he said about the Australian Air Force study. And again, the conclusion of that was that there is a little impact because of flat foot on pain, injury, and function. The judge was very smart person and he said that, fine, that's a completely different set of population. What about the Indian data? So he said that there are 2 studies done in India, and those 2 studies was one on children, the other was on adult, and that says that the flat foot remains asymptomatic. So he said that from these studies, I said that flat foot does not cause disability when child is become an adult. And that is first reason why I have not given treatment, because it's not going to be a problem. Coming to the second point, that the second charge was you should have offered the treatment which you have not offered. So the advocate, the counsel says that you have not given a treatment where actually you need to give a treatment. So he said that, let me explain you the reason why I have not given a treatment. And then he gave the evidence, the Texas Scottish Rite study, which is a prospective study, the 3 years follow-up, in which one group was without treatment, which is a control group, and the other 3 groups were different type of treatment. And the conclusion of that paper says that whether you give a treatment or no treatment, the results are same. So that means treatment is not effective than no treatment. So the second argument he made is like, I did not suggest any treatment because the treatment are not effective. So now the judge has taken to the counsel of the opposite side that now I am giving you the last chance to defend. The doctor, sir, has said a very good evidence against your charges. And now if you want to say something, you have to defend. So naturally, they went to the surgeon who has instigated them. So he said that, fine, I accept what he said, but treatment may not be effective, but definitely it reassures the family and it is not harmful. So he should have given treatment to satisfy the family psychologically. So after listening this point, he said that, let me tell you why we should not treat asymptomatic flat foot. And he said that the side effect was studied in USA, and they realized that if you treat a flat foot by any means, that leads to an inferiority complex to a child. Child have a negative image about his or her body, which is definitely going to be a long-term problem. So it's a serious side effect. The other 2 side effect is cost and discomfort. So based on that, I would like to say that not only treatment are ineffective, but they have a serious side effect psychologically. So ultimately now you are going to decide what should be the judgment. So if it's an actual presentation, the live presentation, I would ask audience to opine. So Mandeep, if you are a judge, what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly rule in favor of Dr. Jayant.
Okay, good. Soumya bhai, if you are a judge, what will you do?
Well, sure, I would agree. I would 100% rule in favor of Dr. Jayant.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to that. Actually, he was relieved of all the charges, but story does not end here. All throughout the process, the family of a child, they realized that the senior orthopedic surgeon was not having an adequate knowledge, and he has probably given them a wrong direction. And it's because of his suggestion.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Can we just stop here for a moment? This is
sure, please.
Interesting. Let us ask the panel whether they would have done anything differently in this case so far. Like I feel if that patient had come to me.
Mandeep, this is the last slide. So let's finish up that. And after that, we will discuss.
It is just a story. How to make a presentation. That is the issue.
Yeah. Okay.
So we are coming to that. This is the last slide.
This may not be a real story, dear.
No, I can understand.
So the story is not over. Now the family, they ask the senior orthopedic surgeon to pay a huge amount for giving them the wrong direction and taking so much of time for the court and everything. So I would like to give you the take-home message is the flat foot usually does not cause pain even when they become adult. Arch support is not effective. Ineffective treatment also has a side effect, and that causes inferiority complex in a child. In addition to that, I would like to add that please don't criticize your colleagues, and we always need to remain updated. Thank you. So that was the second presentation. Now it's open to the panelists and you can share your views about this. What do you feel, whether it's proper, whether it's not proper? What I have done is as Soumya Bhai said, I use a story as a vehicle so that the message is conveyed in a better way. Yes, Mandeep, please.
No, I mean, I've seen so many of your presentations and I'm really a big fan of your presentations because of these particular genres that you follow.
Yeah, so thank you. The credit goes to Soumya Bhai.
Maybe that we came to know today, but do you think this is possible in every kind of situation in our practice, Kaustubh Bhai? Do you think this is going to be possible? This kind of
the commonest scheme is problem and solution. That also gives you a story. The problem and solution. That is also a scheme.
Yeah. For me, Mandeep, this is the first time. I mean, I am seeing this kind of version of a presentation. I have never seen this, right. And it's truly innovative. And I'm sure that we should be able to at least many of our presentations can have this kind of a turn, and which can make it very interesting. But I'll have to have a lot of thinking tonight on this. So thanks for the thoughts.
So, every patient of ours is a story, especially every patient is a story.
Yeah.
Every stage.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, Taral Bhai, please.
Dr. Shah Sahib, you first, please.
Every stage, what you have done in every stage, there is an excitement, and that excitement catch the whole audience towards that particular presentation, and that excitement, well, for the doctors, suppose a person is writing down and all these things, what mistake he did and what mistake he has not done is another thing. But the story was, you have made it in presented in such a big way that each and one is excited about what will happen next, whether the judgment will come in favor of the Dr. Jain or it will be coming and not in favor of the Jain.
Now
so it was really
many times such stories are taken in a true sense. So now the people are asking. They are saying,
who was the doctor? Who was the senior doctor?
No. They are saying, medicine is not maths. Doctors may give different opinions. All the best interest of our patient. One can always say, in my opinion. So, they have understood. This is not a subject about the flat foot. This subject is how to prepare a presentation in a story way. So they thought that this is a real story. I don't think this is a real story.
Now, this is not a real story. This is
but that we have to say that beforehand.
Disclaimer.
We have to put the elephant first. Otherwise, they are carried away in the story, not in the presentation.
So that's an achievement, sir. That's an achievement.
See, that's an achievement. A lot of people, they ask me when I get down from the stage or from the podium, sir, it was a right story. It's a true story, or it's a mid story. So that's what they really engross into the story, so that they really have that question. So that's I consider as an achievement.
There are opinions. There are opinions. Dr. Jawad Jetwa is saying when you are asked to present your talk, it should not be merely a reflection of your literature. You must endorse the message with your own experience and stories that you have done already. And now Dr. Deepak Dave is saying, agree, it is innovative, but stories should not be heavy, traumatic, stressful. Better to have a very light story.
Okay, I think Soumya Bhai will be able to give about the feelings which we generate from the story, because he has studied this point so well. So that like every time when we meet, I go on asking him a lot of questions about the feelings he convey in that. So he is going to give an expert comment on that.
Yeah, you always ask if there is. Yeah, you always ask if there is a formula for a good story, and I always keep telling you that there is no end would be different. And in your case, I think again the audience is different. Sometimes you're addressing the doctors, sometimes you're addressing the technicians, and sometimes you're addressing the patients. So in all the targeted audience groups, your presentation will have to be different. This particular presentation, I thought would work across the board, because a layman like me also, because I was glued to the story, I got interested in it, and also took away the information. So I think that really helped me. But हमारी भाषा में कहिए तो it was a courtroom drama. So it's always interesting. A courtroom drama is always interesting. You have a judge, you have a doctor, and you have an ongoing case. So that courtroom drama created that kind of an interest. So I think more than a complete story, you just need some elements from story. And in your case, content is more important than the embellishment. And I think that's exactly what this presentation was.
Okay. So Dr. Ketan Shah has said that today he learned that every presentation should have an element of surprise, suspense, and excitement.
I agree with him.
Can I, Naveen bhai?
That should be.
Yeah.
Can I make a couple of two quick points? So one point is that, as we saw in this presentation, the focus was on the message. It never took over the drama. If drama takes over the message, then it's a mishap. Right. That should never happen.
Right.
The second message I want to give is you have to remain unpredictable. If Dhiren Bhai gives a suspense story on each of his presentation, it will lose its value. So the excitement has to be built up, but in different way every time, and you have to keep evolving to do that.
Right.
Yes.
Nice.
I think now we go to the next presentation of Kashyap Bhai.
Kashyap Bhai, go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
It was wonderful. Very nice. It was great. You know,
Thank you.
It stimulated us to think on something.
Yes. Thank you.
Very nice.
Who is leaving?
Soumya Bhai is leaving.
Yeah, okay.
Soumya Bhai, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
being there.
Sorry.
On behalf of Gujarat Orthopedic Association.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Is that my presentation on screen?
Yeah,
yes.
Presentation is on, but there are one or two. One or two things have come for Dhiren.
Yes.
Can we put a small dramatic video to make it interesting?
Yes, I whatever like we can do to bring innovations or a novelty, that is first thing. If we can create something suspense, that's another thing. Suspense is the most important feeling which will keep audience with you.
Okay. And Dr. Abdul Ghani from the Jammu is listening. He said that in the first slide, disclaimer of a frictional story is better to.
I would say that it would be better at the end if you really want to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you make it on the first, people will lose interest at all from the story. Yeah.
I agree.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody has said that Dhiren Bhai has done a Rajat Sarma's Aapki Adalat.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, should I start?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Gujarat Orthopedic Association, specifically Naveen Bhai, President, Gujarat Orthopedic Association, my panelists and the speakers, to give me opportunity to speak on a subject which is a little different, but still touchy to everybody, because everybody is, having so many difficulties in time management, doing with, various aspects of life and all that. So my story of, time management will be at a large, will be covering goal setting, about scheduling and organizing, prioritizing, delegating, avoiding distraction in your daily life, and learn to say no, and how to stay optimized and avoiding procrastination. To start with, I am starting with a average doctor's, daily scene. Is that video running?
No, video is not running.
Okay.
Video is not running.
Okay.
Can you do one
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. Now, yes. Yes.
Is there a sound inbuilt or no?
Yes.
Sound is there with that
yes.
video?
Yes, it is there.
The sound is not coming because you are not shared the computer sound. If you want to run again with the sound.
Yes, sound is there inbuilt.
Inbuilt sound is there, but it will not come. Just do one thing. Stop sharing. Share again. Then select lower down. There are two things. Check marks. Include computer sound and optimize.
Where is that? Where is that?
Optimize my video. Yeah.
Where is that? Include my sound.
Share the screen.
Then okay. Then yes.
There is a lower down to tick marks.
I got that. Yeah.
If you had asked, I have said it. No,
sorry. I'll start again. So that's probably a story of every doctor, where they are having very difficulty in balancing their work and the life. So doctors are overworking. We all know that we are overburdened with work and health policies of the government. Sometimes we are overworking due to self-imposed principles. And there is an estimate of say about 50% of doctors say suffer from hypertension or some cardiovascular morbidities. We have a highly undisciplined schedule of work, food and sleep. And we see there are many untimely demises also. So we have always been overworking. See, we many times we speak, you know, कि मेरे पास खाने का time नहीं है. Some people will say that कि मेरे पास सांस लेने का भी time नहीं है. Or sometimes some people say कि मेरे पास मरने का भी time नहीं है. But mind you, if you don't have time, we are not organized. So time management is a basic tool to organize our daily life. And to have a balanced life, we need to organize. To balance life, we need to work on many aspects of life other than work also.
Kashyap bhai.
Yes.
There is your internet connection is unstable. So whatever the slides are coming are not up to quality.
Okay. Should I stop sharing?
You maybe no. You continue because you not send me the presentation. Otherwise, I would put here from here only copy,
yes.
backup copy. Okay.
Yes.
If you can send me, I will upload it here.
Okay.
So let us see how the internet. I'm just stopping your video so that we can get more bandwidth. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Stop the video so that probably.
Before that, I have to tell them. Otherwise, he will feel lonely.
No, it's okay. No issue.
Now it is. Now it is improved. See.
Yeah. Okay. So to get you know best output in all aspect, we need to have a time management. So why we need time management? So that we don't regret at the end of the day. Sometimes the day ends and we come home and we feel like, okay, this day has gone without, you know, any purpose. Sometimes at the weekend we feel, अरे यार ये week पूरा चला गया, कुछ किया ही नहीं, क्या हो गया, कैसे week खत्म हो गया? At the end of month, at the end of year, or at the decade, or sometime at the end of life even. So there is a very good book by Bronnie Ware, who is a nurse in Australia. She wrote this book. She was working, you know, the palliative care unit of where the senior people who are about to die by the cancer or something. So they in last days they are kept in that palliative centers. She has asked to all the patients which were coming under her care that what are the regrets which you have at the end of your life. Out of many regrets, she had shortlisted the top 5 regrets. The regrets were, I wish I would have courage to live a life true to myself, not to the life others expected of me. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to express my feeling. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends, or I wish I had let myself be happier. So we are almost, you know, many of us are at the halfway of our, you know, life cycle. If you look at the average life expectancy in India, it's about 69 years. And many of us have crossed the half-life or, you know, the limit of it. So we need to, you know, pause. We need to think, where are we heading? So this is one clip which I am sharing.
चलो जल्दी, नहीं तो लाइट और साउंड शो मिस हो जाएगा.
तुम सब कुछ एक दिन में नहीं कर सकते हैं?
कर सकता हूँ. ये देख. सिर्फ इतना बाकी है. अबे
अब नहीं है. बैठ जाओ चुपचाप.
और अगर हमें बाद में पता चला कि वो लाइट और साउंड शो सॉलिड ढांसू निकला तो?
वो तो होगा ही ढांसू. लेकिन अगर हम चले गए तो ये सॉलिड सनसेट मिस हो जाएगा ना. जितना भी ट्राई करो बनी, लाइफ में कुछ ना कुछ तो छूटेगा ही. तो जहां है वहीं का मजा लेते ना.
So it's, you know, we are all the time, we have been, you know, studied with so many dreams in our life. जैसे ये गालिब का एक शेर है कि हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले, बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले. Sometimes when we work, we think of, you know, pleasure. When we are doing that, sometimes we think of, you know, our own hobbies, our financial aspect. There are so many aspects in life which we need to think upon. The goals has to be, you know, there in life. There is a difference between a dreams and goals. Dream is one which, you know, which doesn't have any specificity, but the goal is one which should be specific. It has to be measurable. It has to be attainable, relevant, and it has to be in a time frame. So it is said that people with the clear and written goal accomplish far more in a shorter period of time than people without them can ever imagine. It is said that only 3% of people actually write their goal on paper. So there are many aspects. See, on the left side you see is a life wheel. There are basic, these are the aspects in which we need to work upon your life. Sometimes we are 90% in our family life. At the same time, maybe we are 40% in family life. So we need to balance this circle. So once you decide you have a goal, then just having a goal doesn't make any difference. You need to make a plan. Everybody has a dream, but the dream is not a goal until it has got a plan. So we often say in orthopedics before doing fracture fixation surgery that failing to plan is like a planning to fail. So once you decide your goals, you should have your plan. How will you be working on this goal? So that's known as a strategy. You should set a priority. You should give weightage to. So your weightage can be different at different age, and you should devise policies to take out that plan. You should have deadlines. It's not like that I will do that anytime. No, if you want to present a paper, you should say I will present this paper by end of these 2 months, and you should review and revise your strategy often. So there are some examples of policies which we can make. So we can make a work policy, like I will work for some 10 hours in a day, or some health and fitness policy, like I'll do exercise for this much time. So once you decide that policy, then the second aspect, you need to stick on that. You can make a policy on a different aspect of life, like, financial policy. You want to restrict your social media, you can make a social media policy. If you want to do some reading, the reading policy, family time policy, and so on and on. You can make your own policies also. So you can to just implement those policies. This one idea is you can have a theme days, like Monday I will be working, Tuesday I will be doing spiritual, like so on. You can have your own theme days. So at this point, I would like to ask, a senior person, the most senior person in this panel, Dr. D.K. Shah sir, what does the goal setting, makes importance in your life for the life management as well as the time management, sir?
Your voice has gone.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Is there a D.K. Shah sir listening there?
Yeah, is there?
Yeah.
Speaker is on mute mode.
Yeah. Now.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, very well, sir.
Okay. So the Kashyap question was about the making goal. See, there has to be goal to everything. I am 75 at present, but I have a goal which I have achieved, but then I set up another goal. But as you are working for the timing, you have to set up a goal. You can't go on working. So I think Kashyap is very right that everybody, each of us has to set up a goal. And when we reach a goal, we can plan another goal after that, but we cannot just go on working for one thing only. So we have a goal of the family, we have a goal of the practice, we have the goal of the financially, we are set up, and I think he's very right that one has to have a goal prior to planning this.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what I wanted to say, that just to have, once you manage your time, so then for what you are managing your time? You are managing your time to achieve your goals. So the goals is not only related to work. There are so many aspects of life in which we need to. So now I'll concentrate more on a time management for our practice and all that. So here you see there are two scenes. There is a scene of a traffic, a typical scene in an Indian crossroads, and there is a one scene where it's a very disciplined. What do you think? Which scene will be having a better movement of cars and all that? So definitely yes, on the right side. So that's the difference between one's life, one who is overworking, one which is a disciplined life, and one which is an undisciplined life. So is there any tools? Yes, there are tools which if you use, it can help you. But sometimes what happens, we are used to our routine life and we are not accepting anything new. So there are some tools which I will be speaking about. There are some basics and there are some new things, and there are some from my experience. So use of calendar is probably the most basic thing in a management of your daily work and social and everything. See, nowadays we have got your calendar on our mobile, and previously our we used to say that paper calendar which was there in the house. So it's a very basic thing which you need. It keeps you on track. It keeps you accountable. It keeps you realistic. To set a deadlines, to have your availability of your schedule, your conferences and planning. So everybody of us need to use a calendar, which probably everybody is using also. So as Winston Churchill said, let our advanced worrying become our advanced thinking and planning. So another thing which is most important, which probably not all are doing. See, this concept is there, to-do list is everywhere in the time management, but these details I have taken from this book, which I would highly recommend all of you to read, is that Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. It is must, to-do list is must for organizing oneself and as well as the organization also. You have to, make multiple lists. The first list which you say is a master list. Master list, anything which come in your mind, which you may be doing tomorrow or day after or after a year or sometime in your life, you need to put everything in that bucket list. So what our mind is, our mind is very good in generating ideas, but it is not as good in retaining those ideas. Sometimes something comes in our mind and then that we forget that thing, and that comes after say 6 months or 1 year that, oh, I was thinking like this. So anything which comes in your mind should be added into the master list, and then you have to have your daily list, weekly list, monthly list, yearly list, and life list also. So the daily list, typically we prepare the day before, prior to the next day, and weekly list we make on the weekends, monthly list on the month ends, and yearly list what we do typically at the year end, what we say, New Year resolutions, but you at least need to see that every 6 monthly. And the life list where all goals are written, but those, every goal which are of, life list should at least be reflected in yearly list. Your yearly goals should be reflected in your monthly list, and like on. That to-do list you can make by using a simple, New Year diary, or you can you can have, some pocket book in that also. But nowadays, there are many apps which you can use. See that there are Trello, there are Evernote, there are Notes. And these videos are also available on Ortho TV. And what I typically use is simple, Notes from my Samsung phone. So once you have, lots of tasks in your hand, so you have many things which is written on your to-do list, then how to take action on that? So there are many ways you can take action on that. One is either you do it, or if it's a big task, then you dissect it and fragmentize it, or sometime you can deadline it, or something you can delegate it, or something which you have written and later on you feel it's not of use, you need to dump it. But how to do that? For that, there is an, Eisenhower's matrix of priorities, where you have to think that whether this plan which you are making is urgent or non-urgent. Same time, you have to think whether it's important or not important. So if it is an urgent and important, you have to do it right now, and like on. So I'll give you some example of the things. Like if you have to attend an emergency, it's important also and it is urgent. So you need to do that right now. But there are something like, going to movie with family, preparing your aluminum meat. These are very important. It is not urgent. Then you schedule them. Then there are some tasks which are urgent but not important for you to do. It is must to be done, but it is not that you have to do it. Like, if you have to pay a telephone bill and it is already on the deadline, then you can delegate it to somebody. Somebody in the middle of your practice comes that, oh, water tank is empty, the light is gone. It's urgent, but it's not important that you need to do that. So you need to have a system to delegate all those things which are not important, that you are supposed to do that. And there are something which is actually of no use, like, checking social media inputs, meeting all salesperson, those who are requesting to you, then you need to stop doing those things. There is another principle which is known as a Pareto's principle, which says that 20% of your effort is causing your 80% of your result, while 80% of your effort which you are doing probably gives you 20% of your result. So you need to identify those 20%. If you know, if you are very good at some surgery and that is giving you a 80% result, so you need to those are your strength. You need to concentrate on those things, and the 80% effort, it's not that you eliminate, but you delegate those things. Sometimes you feel your employees also, there are some 20% of employee which are doing very good work, and there are 80% are not doing that, but that 20% is giving 80%. So you need to give more weightage to those 20%. So everywhere in life you concentrate, see that what is that 20% which is more result oriented. So at this point, I'll ask you, Kaustubh Bhai. Kaustubh Bhai is a very senior oncosurgeon. He is very busy person. He is also, leading many associations. How do you manage your scheduling, prioritizing, to-do list, many conferences which you are attending, Kaustubh Bhai?
Just a minute, Kaustubh Bhai. Let me make you unmute. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you go.
So when I was asked to participate in this symposium, and I was asked that I'll be a faculty to in the panel, and when there was a time management topic, the first thing which came to my mind was how I'm doing it, and that is because of my father, who taught me regarding that Eisenhower's priority plan. Can you go one slide back if you can? Yeah, so this is the matrix of priorities, which is extremely important. I would say that for us professionals, this is the slide which we must segregate our goals, short-term, long-term goals, and day-to-day activities into this, because that will give us the best 24 hours output if we go according to this. And there are many examples of urgent and important, like in an emergency or at the time of your surgery, you are doing some complex surgery and you have to take a decision whether you want to clamp this artery or not, don't want to clamp the artery. So these are urgent and important decisions. And there are some non-urgent but important decisions, like you have to your long-term goal is to publish, or short-term goal is to publish something. You must document all those things. Now that documentation also, you have to schedule it properly so that it is done at the end of your surgery. You may delegate it, but you have to check that it is done, because then only you'll be able to have output from it, which is important for your short-term or long-term goals. There are non-important urgent things, and then there are non-urgent and non-important things. But important thing to understand from these four things is two categories, which is important and non-urgent, if not dealt with in time, will ultimately become urgent and important.
That's
and if something which is non-urgent, something which is urgent but not important, if you don't do it, it will also become urgent and important, because then it will become a critical phase. So you have to be very careful in dividing your activities into this important non-urgent and non-important urgent, and deal with it in adequate time. It is not urgent and important, but if you disregard them, eventually it will become urgent and important. It will eat away your precious time. So that is something which I would like to tell you all, how to prioritize things and then manage your time accordingly. And the goal setting is dynamic. At young age, you have different goals. At middle age, you have different goals. At late age, you have different goals. And you must be able to play with your priorities according to your goals at that age and at that time of your aspirations. And according to that, you should be able to change your priorities.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's what actually we wanted to convey. And you are using this Eisenhower matrix. That's very useful to us. Yeah, thanks. So now the next thing we need to do, we many times do multitasking. So there's one funny clip while somebody using mobile and doing all other things also.
放下手机，放下手机，男的女的老的少的，听我来分析。放下手机，放下手机，现在有个坏风气，就是玩手机。孩子放学回家，进门就玩手机，一边吃着东西，一边打着游戏。老婆这段时间饭都很少做了，为了抢个红包，衣服她也不洗。朋友一块吃饭，都是把头一低，直播点赞拍照，话不多说几句，陪着爸妈聊天，一会儿一条信息，嘴上他们不说，心里有了距离。放下手机，放下手机，男的女的老的少的，听我来分析。放下手机，放下手机，现在有个坏风气，就是玩手机。
So what I mean to say, the multitasking is inviting the mistakes. So that's there is one Chinese proverb that the man who chases two rabbits catches neither. So multitasking is actually a switch tasking. Sometimes when we do it actively, sometimes we do it passively. But it is opposite to focusing, and it is scientifically proved that it lowers your brain performance and IQ. You need to work in blocks of time, avoid any other distraction during that block. And even if you require to multitask, then you need to delegate, which is the very important principle of time management, is the delegate. So in right side, if you take a multiple project, so you need to have, extra energy, but still you will not reach up to the success. But if you take one thing in your hand, that's very high chance that you reach up to the success. So the next and very much important aspect of time management is delegation. Delegation is the art of getting things done through others. So you can do anything, but you cannot do everything. If you want to do few small things right, do them yourself. If you want to do great things and make a big impact, we need to delegate it. So why do we don't delegate? We all know that we need to delegate. There are some common myths or some reason that we feel that I can only do this work. This work cannot be done this much in a better way by others. I am too busy. I cannot develop a system of delegating. And some people feels that I'm indispensable. This is not possible to be done by anybody else. And sometimes, wrongly people are saying, I don't want to dump work on others. Or in Gujarati, we say, mane badhu avde. I am knowing everything, the MBA person. So these are the reason of not delegating, but probably all the reasons are wrong. So what is important? We need to, have a big team. The team, you have to choose the best person for the job. You keep, paramedics as associate. Most of the people, we are practicing in a nursing home, single consultant, and not everybody. It is not possible that can keep a consultant along with, but you keep paramedics. They also can, take away your lot of work. You need to keep HR, accountant, admin, computer operator, depending upon the size of your team. Because most of the time, what we do is we do the job of looking after cleaning, we do job of looking after salary, and we do a job of looking after paying bills and all that. They are not our job, but that takes away a lot of our time. So we need to keep HR in our hospital. Once you have a team, then we clearly communicate what you want from them. So sometimes you are having person, but they are not clear that what you want from them. Once you have a team, once you have clearly communicated, then you teach them how this thing is to be done. Steps of once you do, or you tell them how to do, and then they see. then they are assisting you. This is typically a step of delegation of surgery, which we teach to our fellow consultants. First they see how you are doing, then they start assisting them, then they do, and you are there to assist them so that they don't do any mistakes. Then you are not scrubbed, they do, you just see. And at some point of time that we are both of an equal level, we can, any of us can do this thing. But once you delegate them, once you make your work done from them, you also need to thank the people who assist you and give credit for success. So the best manager, you see on the right side, the person who can delegate everything which he is doing. So he has the only one thing to do, and that is delegation. So how can we start delegating? So write down every small thing which you do in a day for a week. You come in the morning, write down everything which you are doing. You make a note for consecutively for a week. Then at the end of week, make a list of all recurring things and look for the things that is not compulsory for you to do. Delegate whatever you can do from that list to your team. So at this point, I would ask Taral Bhai. I have seen Taral Bhai. He used to come to Junagadh. Junagadh is, very, very far away place. If you look at the map of India, where you used to see patients, he used to do surgeries. Then he used to take photographs of every patient, clinical. He was taking a lot of trouble. Now, if I see him after say 10, 15 years time, then he has delegated most of the things to others. So he's, a consultant goes for a visit to different centers, and he has such a team that many of the surgeries are done by his team. So I would ask Taral Bhai, how you have evolved in this process of delegation?
Yeah. So thanks, Kashyap. What I feel is time management is team management. So when you adjust a time, use a calendar, you're either multiplying or deleting the time. But if you really want to multiply your time, one person multiplying, one task you're doing, you want to make it 4 times, 6 times, then you need a team. And there are different levels of these teams which are very important. It's very important to have very basic, unqualified, ground level, faithful staff, which is multitask to anything. For example, I have a person called Vijay who joined as a 10th failed person, but today he can drive a car, he can make presentations, he can arrange the photographs in a folder, he can file my, some accounting job also he can do. So multitaskers are important. You said multitasking is not important, but multitasking, if you are doing multiple work at the same time, that's not good. But if a person is able to do multiple jobs for you, then that's important. And secondly, you need to have a qualified team if you really want to expand their work. And there are 3 things which are important if you want to maintain a team. It's easy to build a team, but very difficult to maintain a team. And Dr. D.K. Shah has seen, practically when I go to Rajkot, how our team works, how the appointments are given. Nowadays, I do teleconsultation. That also has become a team effort. My fellow takes the history previous day, the entire record is prepared. I do the consultation, but then that consultation now has become just 8 or 10 minutes. I'm able to do 6 teleconsultations in an hour because someone else has put in that 30 minutes to save my 30 minutes. So if you delegate, of course, your time will be saved. Yeah.
So your delegation, equals to your probably, output. The more you can delegate, more you can do output. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Taral Bhai.
So if you have work of 24 hours, but if you want to work only for 8 hours, then the rest of 16 hours have to be done by someone else with equal efficiency. The quality should not suffer when delegating. That's important.
I appreciate, and I've learned a lot of things from Taral Bhai. I'll tell you that delegation of the work to one person who knows multiple tasks. As he has said that suppose a person who knows driving, but he knows little accounting, he can just manage your books and he can manage your this. So that person is so reliable that you are ready to give him and some other work also. So I think Taral Bhai is very correct, and I have seen him working with me, and excellent planner.
So that's the way delegation is done. So you have delegated your driving, you have delegated your photograph management, you have delegated. So the most important is that you need to delegate. So if
can I Kashyap, come to one point?
Yeah.
The successful time management is when you even have to stop delegating, when things happen automatically.
Yes.
You don't have to tell anyone what to do. That's the ultimate.
That is to be gone in auto mode. Yeah, that's correct. That's probably the highest level of delegation. Yeah. So once we have these ideas, we have goal setting, then we have to-do list, and we delegate. We need to devote some time in future planning. So because your current has to be set, as said by Taralbhai, it has to be gone in auto mode. You have to think, if like, Mukesh Ambani was doing, Reliance Industries Limited, suddenly came with the Jio. The one the Jio is set, they will come with some new plan. So your system should go into auto mode, and you have to devote some time in future planning. The ideas can come anytime. You keep a notebook, write them, you delegate all your routine work. But this, future planning, you should work when you are not distracted. You are with your optimum of your health and the mental status. This has to be done in your prime time. You can borrow this prime time from social media and gossip time, because many times, when we wake up, we start with the social media, we go to sleep, we end our day with the social media and gossip. So you need to find our prime time. There are many books and there are many people says the best time is the morning. Maybe that's right, but that's not the same for everyone. We need to know and use our prime time during the day when you are the most likely to be alert, enthusiastic and creative. In your prime time, you can do your complex tasks at your best, specifically when working on new project, learning, you are, you're doing something new, you're reading, some new techniques of orthopedics you are doing. So prime time differs from person to person. It's not that everybody has a prime time in the morning. So myself, if I look, I'm a night owl. I even though I try so hard, I cannot get up in the morning. Even if I get up, I get fresh, and then again I feel like sleeping. But yes, I can do best in night. So that depends on everybody's different rhythm. But you have to identify your prime time and which is the best time to do your constructive work. Also, you need to identify distraction and time wasters. That also you have to do a paperwork. I actually have done my paperwork in my hospital, and I kept a blank paper on my table. Then I asked all my staff, my physios, my colleague, my partner, that can you tell me every point which I am not doing right. So I list down everything. So you list down anything that distracts you from a routine work. It can be phone calls, social media, or anything. Make a list for a week. Then at the end of week, then you can have an overview that what I should not have been doing. So then you devise policies. If there's something which is important, then you delegate it. Or otherwise, you set, alerts also. You tell some of your colleague or staff, I have 3-4 physios with me. I tell them, when I'm doing this thing, you just poke me that, sir, you are not supposed to do this. So there's a stop doing list. There's many of these examples which people can take from this. Sometimes we argue with the patient unnecessarily. We sometimes, take a lot of time in explaining which is not required. Sometimes we keep on answering on telephone much longer than it is required. You keep yourself busy with the newspaper, gossips. And you also can, you put your bad habits which you want to, you stop in that stop doing list. So once, all these things, all the hospitals should have some kind of management system. So if you look at the bigger corporates and bigger hospitals and industry also, they have various standards which they follow. Probably 80 to 90% of the people in India, doctors, are having, nursing home setup. So they probably will not be able to use those standards, but you can make your standards. How to make those standards, how to make a standard operating procedure. You have to start with, you departmentalize your hospital. How small it be. There are doctors and associate, then there is a reception which is taken as a department. Then OPD and the X-ray taken as a different department. Then operation theater, then indoor in the pharmacy. Once you departmentalize, make a hierarchy. Okay, you give a responsibility, like in a reception you have 4 people. You make a one person who is senior, who is efficient. You are head of reception. So then you give them responsibility and power also to take smaller decisions, so that every small thing should not come to you. Train them to handle your day-to-day issues in that department. Put admin or manager in between the heads of the department and you. So you have to, barrier every small thing which can be barriered. So you have to barrier all your mundane, non-useful work, which are non-productive work at those levels. Then there's a very good book by Atul Gawande. He's an American Indian surgeon who has written this book, Checklist Manifesto, that is basically to prevent complication. So he has given an example of airline where, however experienced a pilot is, they have to pass through a checklist. So the checklist manifesto is giving a message how to prevent complication. But on the other hand, you can use the checklist everywhere in your hospital. So in my hospital, there is after the department's already done, every department has their own checklist, which is written into time slots and difficulty levels. So the junior staff will not be doing the difficult work, and the senior staff will be doing those difficult. Even every small thing, like, in my table, it is written that you have to put this thing should be there. So once you have checklist, your staff would not say that, oh sir, I don't remember this and I don't do this. So that checklist is very important. Another aspect is, which is, daily part of our practice is we often meet to the medical representative as well as surgical representative. Everybody can make a different policy. What I do is, I have made a list of the MRs which I will be meeting. So I have devised a strategy that I will meet only ORG rank 1 to 50 companies. So no other companies are supposed to, request even. They are screened, they are barriered at the medical store. So only the limited companies will be coming to meet me. Then there is an appointment system for them also. Every day, as a limited number of 3 or 4 number of MR is supposed to meet to my hospital, and they are also given a different time. Like, patients are given time, they are also given time. And every time they start detailing, they are not supposed to detail. They are not supposed to take their bag inside the meeting room. I don't meet them in my consulting. I keep them in another room, which is side by. They will be prepared before me, and I will be going there in between 2 patients, and they are ready there. They have their visual aid, and I meet them standing so that the call is not prolonged. Most of the time, my MR call will be limited to 2 or 3 minutes. Then you say no. See, if somebody is coming is from your strategy list, but you are not supposed to prescribe the products which are, you say no, that I am not going to prescribe. Please don't waste your energy over here. Rather, you work at some other place, you may get result. And sometimes there are some new people come, say, I want to introduce a new thing, or some surgical people come that say there is a very new technology come. Boldly ask them how much time you will take, so that he will go one step back. So he will say that, sir, I will take some 5-10 minutes. So immediately he will cut short his timing, which we were supposed to take. Then after 5 to 10 minutes, just look at the watch. Then they will start. So just simply asking them how much time you will take. Sometime will shorten your meeting with the MR. So at this point, I will ask Dikesa sir, which has a very vast experience of handling hundreds of patients in his career, when he was one of the only orthopedic surgeon, one of the only few surgeons in Saurashtra. He must have had many strategies devised for managing, day-to-day activities, sir.
Kashyap, can you precise little?
Yeah, how do you,
just because, see, the time is going.
Yeah.
Extraordinarily fast.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Can you make it little short?
Yeah, how will you small time wasters, which you avoid small time waster in your routine practice? You delegate the things to your staff, you restrict MR or surgical MR, you give some specific time to them. And how do you deal in managing, you avoid your longer meetings? Hello. I think some signal is missing. I'll carry on with the next point. Another thing is, it's a very famous saying from Warren Buffett that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. So saying no is very important aspect in time management. It is very difficult, but it is very important. Rather than saying no, that it is not convenient to me, you can tell them, see, I am comfortable with this, so you should understand that I am not comfortable. So if you don't say no, you say yes to everything. You are busy with so many things which are probably not important to your life. You need to develop appointment system to your hospital. Another thing is telephone handling. It is very important. Telephone is for our convenience. We should be available to needy, our loved ones in emergency, but not to everybody. You can block your calls by Truecaller, or there are some many apps which are available. And you can also delegate phone and answering to some, your senior staff or some associates. So there's one policy which we do is we keep a fixed time to answer to patient. We keep a book and ask receptionists to record the detail. Then we answer at our convenience. And that also,
Kashyap,
yes.
Sorry, Kashyap.
Yeah.
Can you make little shorter so that I got a call from this thing? I'll have to leave otherwise.
Yeah, okay. I have some.
There's a request.
Yeah, I'll try and do that. I'll try to do little fast. I'll skip few things. Yeah. So you use telephone. We use WhatsApp. We ask a patient to their exercise video. We get a video and we advise them so they don't have to come and waste our time. Another thing, you can have some decent office sitting arrangement where you don't keep many empty chairs. You keep your visitor chair which are not close to your table, and then your door should not open to public, because if your door opens to public, then sometime somebody which is known to you, they will poke up and you have to do out of your discipline. And sometimes if you are in hurry, then you answer standing, and you should know that how to conclude a discussion also. And many times, people are explaining which is not required. So no matter how busy we are, but we are never too busy to stop and complain about how busy we are. Many times we argue unnecessarily to the patients. So there's a saying that that we teach the customer that what is right and what is wrong. While arguing that, we sometimes win in our argument, but we actually lose our customer. And we also say life is too short to stress upon yourself over people. We have seen, people who are gossiping in WhatsApp, and they are being so sentimental. They are putting their thoughts and they are opposing somebody else, and they waste 1 hour of their time in a day very easily in opposing somebody. That person is doesn't have any importance in your life. So we should avoid those arguments. We should optimize ourselves. We'll not go into detail, as sir said. We should stay healthy, sleep adequate, do some good exercise. I'll recommend you a book by Darren Hardy, which is the Compound Effect book, which gives what you do every day in a small bits matters more than what you do once in a while. Sometimes you said, I've done exercise for 1 week, 1 hour, but that's not important. If you do exercise 10 minutes in a day, but continuously, then that is more important. That's the crux of this book. We need to take, strategic break. A break every day when you are working. After say 2 or 3 hours, we can stop, we can refresh, and afternoon you can take a power nap. Same way, weekly, monthly and yearly, we have to think of our goals and we have to take strategic breaks for that. The procrastination is a big thing, which is, art of delaying. We procrastinators make us, away from learning new things. And we are creating, say, my webinar is there and I keep on delaying it. And last day, then I feel that, okay, my presentation is about to, then you become panic. So procrastination is a big thing which gets us, disturbs our time management. So what we usually do, what we do while procrastinating, the important thing is we watch TV, social media, Netflix, we nap in between. Okay, now the deadline is still far away and let us, wait for some time and all that we are doing. Then there is a very good book which I also already recommended. That is a Brian Tracy, Eat That Frog. 21 great ways to stop procrastinating. So there, all the details are there. I'm not going into detail because Dr. D.K. Saha sir is in a hurry to reach at some other meeting. So one more important thing is a perfectionism. The problem of being a procrastinator and perfectionist is that at the same time, you want amazing things to be done, but you are too lazy to do your work. And you wait for a perfect time, you want perfect environment, ambience and everything, but the perfect time never comes. And you think that whether this thing has to be done properly or not to be done. So that's perfectionism is one big thing which is responsible for procrastination. And sometimes, perfectionist becomes very harsh and critical to others also. So what we need to do is you accept imperfect. You whatever, if you're done, you're applying some job, do it 75% for a day. Then once you're done 75%, then again you can work on that and you can do 75% more. So the better is said is a better is enemy of good. You sometimes need to lower your standard to raise your standard. So if you want to wake up, say 1 hour earlier, maybe not possible, you start doing it bits, like, wake up 15 minutes earlier. You want to do meditation, you are not, getting the perfect thing, and I want to do 20-minute meditation. So you start with the 1 minute meditation. Same way, you lower your standard, but just do it. Yeah.
Kashyap, please, can you?
I'm about to, these are the final slides, sir. Yeah, okay. So these are the people which probably we are not even aware. These are the social media giants. So for which we are actually working. So if we don't work on our goal, then we will be probably working for somebody else's goal. So this social media is a big hurdle between, our life goals and our run. So I'm skipping this video. So this is probably the last slide. So we should avoid social media. We should handle our temptation to use social media, because we can, once we need to identify our temptation, the TV or mobile or internet, and we need to, keep things away from us. Then we can block some website which we are repeatedly going into without actually need of doing that. We can eliminate all the notifications. We can remove some apps. And as a last message, I would say that we should use social media, and it should not be used by that. So I had to ask, to some faculty members, because of lack of time, I'm not asking what they are doing on their social media. But these are the conclusion remarks, that we need to dream, we need to set goals, we have to optimize ourselves for a better life. We need to make a rock solid routine. We should use to-do list and prioritize work, and we need to learn how to delegate effectively. We should avoid procrastination, and we need to live a balanced life. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashyap bhai. D.K. Saha sir, can you go ahead so that we can have a in-between question answer? Can you share your screen? I am making unmute to you. Stopping sharing by this. And Kashyap bhai, I am making you for video on, so that now your bandwidth can be used in your video.
Yeah. Okay.
Start your video, right? D.K. Saha sir?
Ji.
Yes.
I'm trying to share.
Convinced. So every time when you make an indoor any patient, you should know the middle person of that patient which is admitted in your hospital. You should know from which city he is coming, or by which reference he is coming, or somebody to whom the patient knows and you knows. So at the time of admission, your indoor seat has some specific space to write that, okay, this person is known to this person. So at these difficult times, or there are some issues or problems and all that, you can call that person as a negotiator. See, whatever you have done was in a good faith, but I still don't endorse doing that tactics in any patient.
Can I add one thing?
One thing I'll tell you, it is very difficult to share own mistakes. Yeah. This has occurred for 2 decades, but I was not comfortable to share with it. But now I am at the age of retiring and almost retired. So I wanted to share. Everybody must have faced in their life one or our own mistakes. Own mistake has to be shared. It's very difficult to, they're all painful mistakes. And you have to share it and you have to discuss it out. It's very difficult. But I wanted to share. There are about 7 mistakes which I did it in my life and which I have converted, of course. But how I have converted is very important, so that each of us learn from that some lesson.
That is real greatness of you, that you are sharing your mistake, which very few people would probably be able to do that.
It's painful. It's a painful area of your practice. But Kashyap is very right that every time there is no third person.
Most of the time you will get, after this many years of your practice, you know that this person is known to this, or if you know their caste in the city, then you also can catch out a middle persons.
Another case which is there. After this case, there is one case which is a Bhil boy. What has happened to him? But I have not shared this because we were in short of time, and now time is almost up. There was another case of proximal tibia fracture, and my colleague have plastered it, and how it has happened, and gangrene occurred, and amputation was done, and what has happened to that medico-legally. And because we did the amputation, we were involved, we were also sued, or we were also filed, and there, as Kashyap said, we have involved that community head who was knowing to Dr. C.A. Thakkar, father of Ketan Thakkar, who was a senior surgeon, and I have called him while doing the amputation because I was not ready to do amputation alone. So I have called him. So we have learned another lesson, but that is another case at all. But that is true. But every time we don't get the head of that community,
that's true.
Who is known to us and who is our well-wisher.
Thakkar sir?
Yes.
Can I take your leave? I have another